Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. In today's class, we shall be taking a look at theory of layout and design. When we see good designs, a notable thing about them is that objects are well placed. They are in an organized way. Nothing is arbitrary. Layout refers to the way in which we arrange the elements on a page. It also speaks about how each element relates and interacts with one another to suggest or convey meaning. With the study of layouts, it helps you understand where and how to place things, how big or small each element should be, where and how to direct your viewer's eyes. And I believe this is a common dilemma every yes, but it's more often with the young designers, but even the the seasoned designers, even the professional designers, they still face this every day. But it's just that they've developed the tools to navigate their way around this question about where to place things, how big everything should be. There are tools to like guide, and that is what we'll be discussing. That's what layout. A good understanding of layouts will help you to understand which one should be bigger, which one should be smaller, where should things be placed. Now, there are different ways to do this, which we shall be considering. And there are two broad ways. There's one that is the use of grid. Then one is from the angle of application of some design principles. Application of some design principles. And that is what we shall get into now. The number one key principle for every designer should know is contrast. Contrast is king, both in typography and in design layouts as a whole. In a simple term, right? In a simple term, contrast means the difference between elements. Applying contrast to a design allows you create a focal point. A focal point is just you're telling your viewers, hey, look here. And this is very key in every design. It is very key. You need to direct your viewers' eye. They shouldn't be the one to now be looking what is important. You should be able to tell them this is important. Look at this particular place. Contrast can occur in color, shape, size, typeface. That you can mix sans serif with you can mix sans serif with serif or with with serif. Just like what we have there. The first one, the thank, is a serif. Just like what we have here. The thank is sans serif, while the U is a script. Contrast can also occur in line, can also occur in orientation. A case study. With what we have here, you can see there is contrast in size. Yes, the contrast in size is used to like define hierarchy, to define what is important, to define the focal point, which is the the image. The image is dominant in size, so there's contrast in size. So there's contrast in color. So there's pink and purple. Everything didn't just happen in one color. There's pink and purple, and there's also faded color also going on. So there's that contrast. So it created that harmony. But mind you, when creating contrast in color, right, especially in color, many other things, but especially in color, the contrast shouldn't be conflicting. They should there should be contrast. However, there is contrast, it should also be harmonious in the sense that there is a color scheme. There should be a color scheme to it. Where you can read up. There are many materials online about color scheme and all of that. For instance, what we have here, this pink and purple are much in consonance, and the faded one, like the hashtag IWD 2021, is a faded of the purple. So it's giving it a contrast, making it not making everything be on the same hierarchy, not everything just shouting, but making that one very mild. However, the hashtag IWD 2021 has dominance with size already. So it doesn't it's not a must. We should not give it and dominant with with color anymore. So thus they need to fade it to make it faded. So there is contrast in types. That is the hashtag IWD 2021 is the most dominant in size, then followed by hashtag choose to challenge, then all the details enclosed in the rounded rectangle. So that gives you some form of, because without contrast, everything will just be, and this is very key to differentiating the amateurs' work from the professionals. Every professional work, every good design, contrast is at play. You will see contrast. Because if we had just used one font size for all of this, everything will just be monotonous and you'll be like, where should I look? What is most important? Which one should I look first? Where should I go first? Right? So there's contrast in type. Contrast in type is very, very, very key in design. Then there's contrast in shape. All the shapes, all the shape are in circle except for the rounded rectangle that houses the details. Now, now even though this is a rectangle, right? Remember what I said? Yes, in as much as we are trying for contrast, we should also try to we should aim for harmonious contrast, right? Though the rectangle is in another shape, right? It's rectangle, it's different from the circle all through that we've been having, right? However, the rectangle itself is a rounded rectangle to give the idea of harmonious contrast. Proximity. Design elements on a page that are linked in some ways or another should be grouped together or placed near each other. That is, if you have an idea that flows into another one and they are very, very much related, so they should come closer. Then any other thing that doesn't relate to them there should be a gap between them so that we will know that intuitively when we look, okay, this one is a continuation of this. These are all in the same place. This is a case study. This is a case study of a landing page. You can see everything that has to do with the illustration, right, is on the right hand for this. Is on the right hand. Everything is on the right hand. And the illustration is there to give us a context of what the message, which is online shopping, right? So it's illustrating that everything has to do with that is on the right hand side. Then we now have title and text, right? Are placed together. The online and shopping and Lorraine Imperium, that's just okay. A dummy text. Everything and all the details are placed on the left hand side. Then we have the call to action is immediately below, because it's to a large extent it's like continuation, but it's a bit different. It's immediately placed below, giving a sense of a little separation, but not totally from the title. Then you now have the social media icons separate but placed under the call to action and the title. So the social media icons are placed further away to give them a sense of that they have a class of their own. They have a class of their own. Also, I would like to also note you can see the play of contrast here also, where there's also contrast in size, where the illustration element is very big, is very very big, giving you the idea of as they say, picture speaks louder than words, right? Picture speaks louder than word. So giving you that idea. Then you have online is in bold, then the shopping is a little bit thinner. I think that's the medium font of this sans serif font. Negative space. Negative space refers to the areas that are not taken up by design elements. It can be used to separate sections of our design, define certain areas, and also allow one design room to breathe. That's giving breathing room. Now, this is very key from if another apart from contrast, right? Contrast is one. Another key separating factor that separates amateurs work with the professional looking work is this use of negative space, because For the amateurs, they tend to feel just they are just looking for ways to fill the composition. They're just looking for a way to fill the page with whatever design elements that they have. They just want to show that they can put things, they can do things, they can run, they can do things, right? They find gradients happening here and there. But for the professionals, they know that the elements you have on your page actually need air. They need because it makes it easier for someone to navigate. It's like it makes it well, is that principle of keeping it short and simple. So they are making everything simple, giving everything room to breathe, not plenty thing. They only place the most important thing. So there's this level of minimalism happening, both in color, both in amount of elements they place. So this is a case study here. So you can see the power of one. You can see the power of negative space. With the one on the right here, on this landing page, I have scaled the elements down a bit more. That's the illustrative elements, the illustration down a bit more. So what this does is that it gives there's now very much breathing space, room to breathe between these between the illustration element, between the illustration element and the title. So there's this sense of oh, I'm not being it's not as you're reading it, as you're looking at it, there's that removal of sense of claustrophobic. Then there is space between the title, between the title and call to action with the social media. You can see there's space there. There's also space between the title and the illustration icon, the illustration with the top bar. That's the top menu. That's the place where the home, the our team, our service text are placed. So once again, what this does is that it allows your viewer, it eases your viewer's eye as they travel through your page, as they travel through your work. So as I was saying, so you can see the some example of the high end work here. You can see, for instance, this relaxed furniture sales event. Very simple. There's no need for details. You can see the negative space between the title and the illustration. That's the picture you can see. Then this is the example of interstellar. We just have the illustration, that's the clock. In the first one, the black one here, we have the illustration, the clock. Then down at the bottom right, then you just have the text, the title. That is all. That is all. The same thing with these other ones too. So the point is that there's this, with the use of negative space, there's this professional touch it gives to your work. Even I too, I'm still very much learning to really put this. So, but it's good for you all to put have this in mind, have this at the back of your mind, the power of negative space. Another principle we need to consciously put to use in achieving a very good layout is repetition. Repetition is taking a single element from our design and applying it deliberately throughout our composition or our page. Repetition can be seen in things such as color palettes used throughout as design, or the use of similar shapes or elements. What do I mean by that? This is a case study of a landing page also. So, for instance, you can see there's repetition of form. Form, what do I mean by form? Every element is rounded. If you check the illustration, the head of the characters are rounded, their body are rounded. Then the background too, if find things being rounded. Then when you come into the other elements, you find circle, rounded circle. You find the call to action button, rounded. So there's that sense of continuity going on, of using form, of rounded form. There's repetition of circles. Circles are repeated as framers to frame the whole design, then as little yellow decoratives in the illustration. That's the dots, those little dots as splash. Then there is repetition of color. There is a good color scheme that is maintained from the illustration to the text and to the call to action. Now, it's worthy to know that normally the brown color palette is what should dictate this. Now, if maybe you are designing and you reached out to the client and they say they don't have this yet, they don't have color palette yet, then it becomes necessary for you to pick the color from the logo so that there will be a sense of continuity. The point is that there should be repetition. Things you shouldn't just bring color from anywhere. Think through the design before you start doing one. Before you start doing anything, think through the design as a whole, especially the color scheme. Then get the color scheme, get one, two, three, four color, or even just one, two color. Then repeat that color, play with that color, fade some if you need to fade some, then continue with that. Rather than when you're not design, oh, you feel like using yellow here, you feel like using white here, you feel like using red, and everything will just be chaotic. Now, this is also a very good difference between the professional work and the amateurs. The amateurs, they just feel like, okay, it's like a kid that got released into a candy store. So there's plenty of color. They just start applying. Whereas the reverse is the case. You think through your work, you get a color palette, look for a color palette first, then you now start designing. So there's also repetition in font too. Though the font weights are different a little. Let's say, for instance, the cash on is lighter as compared to the heavy one that is used to write the delivery. However, we have single fonts being used all through. Now, I think it's also worthy to note here about repetition. A good practice is to just stick to one font all through. You can vary the weights. You can vary the weights as you find your cash on is different, has a different weight from delivery, and sizes also. You can find that the major this thing, the one that they use for this cash on delivery is different from the one used for the major menu there in home, about us, support, and contact, right? But they are different in sizes. However, the same font is used. Now there is a place for font, pairing and all of that. However, try not to go beyond just two. Yes, you can go to three, but three everything start becoming. Just try. In fact, just maintain one first off. First off, then you can now move to two. If you master that, alignment. Alignment means linking things together. In order to achieve balance and cohesion, objects must be aligned to each other. So we find here there is a left hand alignment, there is the middle alignment, there is right hand alignment, there's the top, there's the bottom alignment, and there is side alignment. Then with this case study, you can see how the phone and the illustration, though not minding the head of the person there, but the major object there, that's the phone, is aligned with the text, with the major text, right? Is aligned with the major text. And the major text, that's the title, is also aligned with the call to action button there. Then everything on the major menu, that's the home, our team, service, and contact, they are all aligned, they are all bottom aligned. And also the social media icon, each one of them are aligned, are bottom aligned. So everything must be linked. You can't have one of those social media icons and one jumping up or the other. No. And your social media icon is also is center aligned to that call to action. This is another case study. You can see this is an example of a very good professional work. You can see how everything is aligned on the left. Is aligned on the left. Nothing was left hanging. Everything, that's every text, uh, were aligned on the left. Focal point. Focal point. With the use of contrast, we bump certain elements. We also always need to do this. We always need to bump certain elements up so that the viewer's eyes are directed to them with ease. We achieve this using color, size, form, point of view, etc. You can find, you can see, for example, here, this is using the first one here. That's a monkey reaching out for a banana. You can see you can see point of view happening here. There's a point of view happening. That's perspective also happening here. The focal point of this is that banana. So there's the use of color to also highlight that, and there is the use of perspective as that being the biggest size. It's having almost the same size with the monkey there. Then on the second image, the DCSL image, you find the focal point being the image, that's the woman, right? Being the woman, she's a focal point. So you find her being big in size. Because the first thing you need to ask before you start designing, what is the major thing that once somebody looks at this that they should see? This also scores the next thing there, the psychology and language in the other one, in this thing. Because this is is actually from a carousel, a slide, an IG slide. So there's for each slide is a topic. So this particular topic is psychology. Then the next one is language. So the first thing that designer, the person that designed this wants us to see is the psychology, is the tie to psychology and language. So you can see how bold it is as different from the other text under. So, and you can see the use of color also, especially that of the language, the use of color to pop, to make it pop out. Sometimes when trying to achieve focal points, it doesn't necessarily have to, it doesn't, the, the focal point, the major thing you want your viewer to see doesn't necessarily have to be the the biggest in size. For instance, this example at the right hand side, the extreme right, the focal point there is not the biggest. Rather, the bike is the biggest object there. However, in as much as it's the biggest, it's not, because you can find the point of view pointing you straight to that little boy there running, right? So there's use of point of view. Even though it's the smallest in size, there's point of view to direct our eyes there. Now, we can also use grid. Grid is a very good system to use to, establish um, a good layout, and a very, 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 very one of the very common, if not the most common, is the use of rule of third. Rule of third. Rule of thirds states that if you divide any composition, that is your page, into thirds, vertical and horizontal, then place the key element of your image either along these lines or at the junction of them. And once you do this, you achieve a more pleasing arrangement and more interesting dynamic composition. So you can find here, you can see the dog in this example here being placed here. You can see. So these are examples. These are examples. You can see the in this interstellar image, the person is placed in this middle. So you can see high level of rule of thought. Then when this person was designing this, divided his composition into three. The golden ratio. The golden ratio basically is dividing your composition into boxes that each is two times smaller than the former one. So you can find that this is the biggest one here. Then the next one is this. So you can see the biggest one here followed by this, right? So this one, once you times it into two of this, you get this. Once you times it by two, you get this. So this is how to construct. This is just a way to construct the golden ratio. Well, but in application, you just need to just place have this. You can search for golden ratio online, but we also make this available for you also. Just once you get to a golden ratio, place the grid over a composition. That's your composition. Place the most important part of your design at the tightest part of the spiral. Then allow every other element to work with the motion of the spiral line. So that you find here in the right hand side here. Right, the most important object was placed at the tightest corner. That's the least this little boy. Then every other thing now followed suit. That's the bike. This you also find in this around campus. You find okay, this particular place that a key thing is the message we want to pass across. That's around campus. So we place it there. Then every other thing was now flowing from there. Also here, we want also this the basketball. That's the business goal achieved with design. We want the design. We want the major thing we want is the illustration, right? You can see here the importance is placed on the illustration. We want them to see the illustrator, the character scoring the goal. So you can now see that was placed here. Then every other thing followed, just flowed with it.